now?
Within 10 seconds, you're live.
I have also requested Ms. Anita Praveen, unfortunately, has been called by the finance minister. However, she had cleared her speech, and we are requesting our colleague from Anjali to read the speech which she has made. Anita ma'am has sent us. So I would suggest, Varun, if you are also able to get her added.
Yes, sir. She is trying to log in from her phone also.
Okay, if we can just do that. Although, okay.
Sir, we are live now. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. Indeed, a very warm welcome from all of us in ASSOCHAM. It is indeed a privilege that we have a very, very august set of speakers today on an important topic, which is enabling a $1 trillion digital economy, interdependent, interconnected, and digital. ASSOCHAM as an organization takes pride at being a knowledge chamber, and we are indeed very proud that we are able to have deliberations with some extremely insightful speakers and leaders, if I may say, of the country, sharing their thoughts on this important topic. To set the broad agenda and the tone, and there is a very exciting set of speakers, as I said, we have in front of us who will actually espouse a little bit more. I might just set the context as to why this particular conference and this theme was chosen by us in ASSOCHAM, and specifically in the Digital Communications Committee. It is because a very, very ambitious goal has been laid by the Honorable Prime Minister and the Government of India for digital. And they have said that they expect that the digital economy will be as much as $1 trillion in the next few years, 2025, 26 timeframe. What that really means is that we're talking about the digital economy potentially contributing 20% of the $5 trillion economy that India is expected to be in the next 5 to 6 years' time. Now, when you look at the MeitY report itself, it talks about a baseline for the digital economy, where it says that the value of the digital economy as of 2019 is 200 billion. So what we are talking about is to literally grow from 200 billion to about $1 trillion in a matter of a few years. And while that might sound very tall, I must say that when we look at it from ASSOCHAM's point of view and Digital Communication Committee's point of view, it is very much achievable, because in the digital space, the ability to scale up is dramatic. We just have to look at telecoms, which is the foundation of digital revolution. The kind of internet users that have come up in the last 5 to 6 years, the consumption of data that has happened in the last 5 to 6 years is tremendous. As a nation, we are hungry. As a nation, we are young. As a nation, we are aspirational. And therefore, the content that we are able to consume, the innovation that we are able to do in terms of work and play and everything else is dramatic. And that has also driven in the huge growth of data in the country. As much as 30 times more data is consumed today than was consumed about 5 years ago. The ASSOCHAM dialogue report that we are going to be presenting and discussing and debating today actually drives a lot of the linkages, which is not just about the communication platform, but the fantastic work that is done by the internet players, the OTT players, the device ecosystem. And therefore, the theme that we chose was it's about interlink, interconnection. And therefore, we believe that the success of the digital economy is only going to be, and each and every component in the ecosystem is able to successfully drive and pull their weight and also help the others to go around. A lot of talk will be, of course, there on the government's policies, the NDCP 2018, which is a landmark, visionary policy of the Government of India. The recent, production-linked incentive programs. A lot of focus on, safety, privacy, data security, and so on. I think all of these are great initiatives that the government itself has taken. So when we look at it, we have the opportunity where the government policy is in place, the state and the central governments are supportive of Digital India, the whole digitization is going on a strong way, and the ecosystem players are doing what is required to be done in order to make it an extremely vibrant sector, one that builds not just for itself for the digital economy, but also to energize the economy as a whole. We just have to look back at the last 12 months and the pandemic period to realize what a difference the digital economy has made in keeping the wheels of India and the economy running. So I just thought I'll share some of these things from SHM and digital communication sector standpoint as to why we chose this particular thing and why some of the deliberations today are extremely critical for us to go through. And with that, I would just quickly move on and request if we are in a position to release the report first before we request our chief guest, Dr. Amar Patnaik, to share his views on the topic. I will just request Varun if you can help us do the needful in terms of the release a report, and then I will come back and give a brief introduction of our speaker, Dr. Amar Patnaik, before I hand the floor over. So Varun, please.
Sir, didn't hear you.
Can you help us with the release of the SHM dialogue report?
Yes, please. Ji. Anup, can we show the report on the screen, please? So, can I request all the speakers to have the copy of the report?
All those who are able to get it may kindly flash it, and those who don't, some of us don't have, but handy, but very proud to be. Thank you so much. I will then move on and request our chief guest, Dr. Amar Patnaik. I'll just give a brief introduction. And before I do that, I must mention that we are indeed honored to have representation from TRAI. Mr. S.K. Gupta, the Honorable Secretary of TRAI, is there. Ms. Anita Praveen from DOT, our Additional Secretary, unfortunately got called into a meeting with the Finance Minister, but she has handed over her speech and her good wishes for this. Again, we are very grateful to Ms. Jyoti Arora, who's taken the time to be here with us from the Ministry of Electronics and IT, and she will be addressing us, as well as Sri Rahul Mathan, who's the partner of Trilegal, and of course, my dear friend and colleague Ashwini Rana, who's here with us. And so, a real hearty thanks, if I may say, or welcome to all of you who have decided to share this, apart from our knowledge partner dialogue. We are indeed fortunate today, moving on to the next part of the program, in inviting Dr. Amar Patnaik, Honorable Member of Parliament. He has done a graduation degree in science. He's done a PGDBM, LLB, a Master's in Public Management, and a PhD. So therefore, extremely widely read and also very knowledgeable. He was educated in the St. Stephen's College, Delhi University, in Xavier Institute of Management, Bhubaneswar, Odisha, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore University, John F. Kennedy School of Government, Harvard and Xavier University. And so he is extremely, how do I say, articulate and very knowledgeable on multiple topics. He's by profession a lawyer. He's also a management consultant, an economist, a political and social worker, a teacher and an educationist. A British Chevening scholar, he's moderated discussions on many topics, including anti-corruption for United Nations Global Compact. He's led a team of 100 volunteers for distribution of essential food items, candles, etc. in the aftermath of the Fani cyclone in Odisha in May 2019. He is the head social media of BJD. He is a certified fraud examiner, certified internal auditor, and certification and he holds a certification in risk management assurance. So we couldn't have found a more erudite and a representative of the people and a member of parliament to actually be our chief guest for this event. So without much ado, Dr. Amar Patnaik, over to you. Dr. Patnaik.
Sir, you are on mute.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. A very good morning to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Balaji, for those generous words. And of course, warm welcome to the other members. It's indeed a pleasure for me to speak on this, having spent almost every week or every alternate week last year on the PDP bill, I being a member of the Joint Parliamentary Committee on the Personal Data Protection Bill. Of course, that's just a small subset of the entire topic that we are going to discuss about. But just for your information, just a couple of days ago, we were again in the Finance Committee discussing exactly this topic with the Niti Aayog team, led by the CEO, Mr. Amitabh Kant, in the Finance Committee. And we were discussing in great detail about many aspects of the digital economy, the challenges, the latest thing about cryptocurrencies, the transactions, e-commerce transactions. Incidentally, must all be knowing that today we have a Bharat Bandh because the traders are demanding repeal, or let us say lessening the importance of e-commerce. So there is some problem somewhere there as well. But let me get into the issue at hand that we do recognize, and there's no true opinion about it, that the digital economy is going to be a major, is going to have a major share in our GDP by the year 2025. Some estimates say 20, some estimates say 30%, and it's all good. And you know, there is one great thing that has happened during the pandemic, where while the economy took a nosedive in terms of economic growth, and probably people's poverty, some of the people were pushed back to below the poverty line. One thing that grew very, very well is the digital transactions or the digital economy, particularly in the sectors of education and health. And it has gone deep into the education training space, which is a great welcome thing. There are challenges, of course, which I'll be discussing a little bit, but I just want to say that there's no doubt about the fact that digital economy has to be promoted. We have to, digital transactions have to be promoted. We have the large 90% of our informal sector, which has to be brought into the formal sector, and the digital space has to be made accessible to all of them. Of course, initiatives like the One Nation, One Ration Card, and what we have. What we, sorry?
May I request whoever is not speaking to consider the mute?
Yeah. So what we have experienced, what we yesterday in terms of a Niti Aayog report on migrant laborers also helps kind of premises on the fact that the delivery of services to the migrants would be increased, and the backbone would be the digital infrastructure. So everywhere it is going to be there, and it's a very important thing. And I think the most important thing about interdependence and digitization is internet. So we have to ensure that internet reaches every village, every household in the country. There are efforts which are being made. BharatNet is already happening, but let me tell you my experience about Orissa. 50% of the Gram Panchayats still do not have access to internet. The teledensity, let's say, in Orissa is about 77%, and in rural areas it is less than 60%. Now, given this situation, the potential is huge, but we have to respond. The government has to respond, the private sector has to respond, and even the people of everybody has to respond to get into that particular space, to unleash the entire, unlock the potential that we have. We need to also ensure that the issues relating to accessibility, the issues relating to the so-called digital divide or digital asymmetry, they have to be reduced. And they have to be reduced not only in the space of, let's say, one education or health, it has to be reduced in the space of daily life. what one is able to get in an urban city in India should also be available to a rural Indian at almost the same transaction cost. And that is what is going to make this digital economy our aspiration of having $1 trillion or more by 2025 possible. Otherwise, the iniquity, if at all it gets perpetrated, which I don't really foresee, I think things will fall into place, actually create a separate set of problems in the country. Mind you, we have the Jan Dhan Yojana, we have the One Nation, One Ration card, we have several, we have the DBT, but unless and until the internet is available in a place like Malkangiri in Orissa and the 118 aspirational districts of the country, how do you assume, or how can we aspire to reach that particular figure of 1 trillion by 2025? These are some of the thoughts that has come to me in terms of implementation of the government schemes and plans and programs to reach that particular goal that we have, that the Honorable Prime Minister set for us. So what is likely to change? What is likely to change is, of course, digital labor. What is likely to change is workspaces. People might like to now have a more plug-in, plug-and-play kind of systems rather than have a heavy infrastructure themselves. There may also be a lot of accent on digital skills, on tech foundations, and one thing that is definitely going to happen is digital-led innovations. Now, digital-led innovations in the public sector to deliver services and utilities to citizens is going to my mind, is going to be the backbone of this digital economy. I'm very conscious of the fact that we are talking about exports, we are talking about software exports, we're talking about innovations which can be exported outside, cross-border data flow, a lot of things. But I'm conscious of the fact, all these facts, while making the statement that the backbone of our digital economy would be the how quickly, how economically, and how efficiently we are able to deliver our public services and utilities to every common citizen. Unless there is a citizen buy-in into the digital environment, whether he may be an unlettered farmer or he may be an unlettered agricultural laborer, the revolution that we are looking at probably will not happen by the time that we aspire to be there. I talked about the fact that we have to get the informal sector in. I am also aware of the fact that we need to have the infrastructure ready. We need to have the infrastructure in Gram Panchayats. We need to have these payment gateways. Some of UPI is doing wonderfully well, but we have to think at some point of time that whether the common man in the rural village is, or the woman in Malkangiri or in some place in Guntur is able to access that particular service and get that benefit. We have these common service centers, the Jan Seva Kendras, but we also know that for the last 10 or 15 years been there, they haven't been really able to deliver the kind of service because of whatever, the revenue model was not making sense. So I would finally end probably by making a few suggestions that I thought would be useful. And one particular thing which I forgot to mention is about the MSMEs. The MSMEs, we are conscious about the fact that there has to be the level playing field, and therefore in the personal data protection bill there have been several debates within ourselves, giving and in the bill itself making a sandbox for them. So we need to have more of these sandboxes, and just like the GEM, which is there for marketing, I think we need to have similar kind of platforms for the input side also. We need to have we need to solve the problem of liquidity and credit, which is what everybody is grappling with, including in the finance committees that I am in. So I would make the following recommendations, that We need to increase availability of digital infrastructure at rural and remote locations. We have to improve digital literacy. We have to create awareness on the benefits of digital services. We have to provide incentives for greater participation from private players. We have to occupy the education and the health space in such a manner that the digital divide is not is less as much as possible. We have to look at the banking system. We have to improve the banking facilities at the lowest level in the villages. And of course, we will have to think about distributing the talent pool. The talent pool cannot be concentrated only in the towns and the cities. So all this would happen. There would be also a danger of a digital west. There would be also a danger of impact on the environment. But I'm very confident of the fact that if we plan well, the digital growth that we are looking at, the digital economy that we are to push for, would actually can probably improve our participation in climate action, and in a positive sense. And if done properly, executed properly, we would actually be helping the environment, or Mother Earth, more than anything else. Once again, I would thank ASSOCHAM for this invite. I'm very happy that we are discussing this topic in greater detail. We have to, as I said, I keep on re-emphasizing this point, that we have to take it to the lowest level of our country. We have to get the entire informal sector to this space, and then, mind you, then there will be the sky will be the limit. We can talk in terms of a digital nationalization. When we reach that level, we could actually develop our own platforms. We could develop our own shared service or shared messaging services, and we could actually be leader in the world as far as digital economy is concerned. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patnaik. It was a fantastic exposition of various facets. I guess since you've been intimately involved in some of those discussions in the last couple of years, you've been able to bring that human element also and the planet element also, apart from the policy element. So really, really grateful for your exposition, which sets the stage for the next few speakers that will also follow. Before I invite our other esteemed speakers on this occasion for delivering their special addresses and keynotes, it is my pleasure to invite our dear friend Kazim Rizvi. Kazim is a public policy entrepreneur and founder of an emerging policy think tank, The Dialogue. And really, as ASSOCHAM, we are very proud of our joint initiative as them being the knowledge partner for us on this. Kazim is a lawyer by profession, and he envisages to drive change in India through the medium of policy and research. And that is a vision that helped the founding of Dialogue. Over the last couple of years, Dialogue has emerged as a leading voice in India's policy ecosystem, with a stronger focus on technology, energy, strategic affairs, and development studies. Dialogue is a horizontal institution that delivers on policy research, public discourse, and capacity building initiatives around its key sector areas. And Kazim, prior to this, led the energy policy communication for the British High Commission, and before that was a Swaniti Fellow with the office of Mr. B.J. Panda, former Member of Parliament. So Kazim, over to you, so that you can probably highlight to the audience the key recommendations and findings of your report. Over to you, Kazim.
Thank you, Balaji. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, please, you are.
Great. Thank you so much, Balaji, and thank you, Dr. Patnaik, for coming at the launch event today. And thank you to all our speakers, Mr. Gupta, Mr. Arora, Rahul Mathan, and Mr. Rana, and all the attendees today who are watching us, listening to us. So it's been a great exercise over the last 1 year that we have developed this study in collaboration with ASSOCHAM. And the idea was, of course, we're looking at how can we drive policy roadmap for India's $1 trillion economy goal, which the Prime Minister of India has envisaged for India. And the digital economy will play a major role in terms of driving the overall $5 trillion economy goal, which India has today. And over the last 1 year, we've done significant amount of research. We've spoken to stakeholders. We've had focus group discussions, analyzed the literature we have, and we've arrived at this study which has been launched today in terms of giving few action points and policy roadmaps which are key to achieve the $1 trillion economy goal by 2024. And to start with, on the report itself, the focus for us has been to look at two key sectors. One is, of course, the telecom sector, and the other is the digital services sector. And the evolution of digital economies is taking place at such a fast pace that you need both the sectors to work collaboratively and in a very interconnected manner. The telecom sector being the foundation, the pipe of the infrastructure of the digital economy, and of course the digital services sector using the pipe to transfer and to share services and to connect people all over the globe, and to, of course, allow businesses to prosper and to allow new people to create new opportunities. With that focus, we've arrived at a few policy ideas which are important for the government to implement in order to drive a $1 trillion economy goal. First of all, we've analyzed the telecom sector, and there are certain challenges which, of course, we understand are present today, but there are opportunities as well, which India, if it does the right policy solutions, will definitely be able to usher in a global era of domination in the coming days. Number one is along with alleviating the financial stress. The telecom sector right now is in significant debt, and this is something which the government departments and the stakeholders understand. But in order to improve the situation, we believe that there is a need for certain decisions that can help the sector get back. And these decisions are something which are possible to take and which can definitely help in alleviating this financial stress, which includes the upliftment of average revenue per user, ARPUs. Upliftment of ARPU is important. Reducing regulatory levies on telecom is something which is critical, we believe, and also addressing the AGR, the adjusted gross revenue issue. These are the three key things which we have recommended in our study, which we believe would be critical to help the telecom sector get back on its feet and to able to support new investments, which will be critical for the development of new technologies such as 5G. And 5G is something which the government is very keen to look at, and is going to definitely change the ecosystem dramatically. And we believe that if these three things are implemented, it can really help in improving the ecosystem. The next is, of course, we've analyzed the digital infrastructure challenges right now, which are present in India. And Dr. Patnaik spoke about infrastructure development. And we do believe that the government is focusing a lot on infrastructure, but at the same time, there's a lot more which can be achieved with the policy recommendations we have. So we're looking at the report of the Task Force on National Infrastructure Pipeline, that there is an urgent need to fast track the progress, necessitate fundamental changes to operate digital communication infrastructure. It will help us in achieving a stage where communication fulfills its potential of becoming a universal platform for equitable and inclusive growth across the country. So investments in infrastructure need to be enhanced, and universal last mile connectivity is very critical to achieve for India, which of course means improving the access, internet access, making sure that internet travels to the last mile. And Dr. Patnaik spoke about it, the fact that we have to make sure that we are able to expand the net of internet as much as possible. And we hope that in the coming years, couple of years, the government is able to go beyond 1 billion connected users on the internet. So to achieve that, it's important to build a robust infrastructure at the backbone. And this will also be important as India ushers towards giving its users 5G internet. Moving on, we've also looked at the digital services sector. And on that, there are a few suggestions which we have put forward. Obviously, there is a data protection bill which the government of India is looking into, and Dr. Patnaik is member of the committee which is looking into the bill. And I do believe that this is going to be a path-breaking policy, a path-breaking regulation, which will definitely put India on a global map of becoming a digital hub for the world. At the same time, the digital protection, the data protection bill of 2019 definitely has a lot of great aspects, but there are certain challenges which we have identified. Of course, a couple of them being, one is making sure that the bill is in line with the Supreme Court judgment of right to privacy, in line with test of proportionality. And there are adequate safeguards when it comes to access to data. in terms of various purposes for national security. I think those two things are very important. And we also need to make sure that the bill is interoperable. It works. It's a global. It's a bill which operates in a global fashion. So that India can have agreements and bilateral treaties with EU and the other like-minded countries to allow free flow of data. So that's something which is also important. And the bill definitely was a step forward from the 2018 draft. So the government is definitely listening, and they do understand that we need to have a very progressive data protection bill, which will allow businesses to grow. Indian companies should be able to create and sell services globally. How can we achieve that? And I think the data protection bill will definitely be a great opportunity for India to be able to showcase its power, its startups potential to the world. Similarly to how American companies are investing and operating in India, we want Indian companies to come from India and go and invest and do business abroad. So we need to create that platform and that ecosystem. And we do believe that the PDP, the new version, which whenever it comes, hopefully will look into these aspects. Similarly, the government is also looking into the non-person data committee report. There's a committee which has been set up, and Mr. Mathan is a member of the committee now, and he's advised the committee. And the committee came up with the first draft, which had a lot of submissions, and the second draft is a completely new document with definitely a big step forward from where we were. And the government is definitely looking into various challenges, and they've actually adhered to a lot of those issues. But there are certain issues which we have identified, challenges in terms of operational challenges, which we feel should be ironed out as things proceed. And then the third aspect is basically looking at the intermediary guidelines. And some of us who have been following it know that the government has come up with the new rules as of yesterday, but the report looks at the 2018 draft. And still, there are a couple of areas. One is, of course, safeguarding encryption. I think that's something which we spoke about, the fact that privacy of user and security of state is critical, and which is why encryption should be protected. And the fact that we also need to make sure that internet shutdowns, whenever internet shutdowns are taking place, we at least assess the economic cost of internet shutdowns. And it should be regulated in a fashion which the government understands that, yes, if there is definitely a legitimate need, then let's do it. But it should be done through a process, which I'm sure that the government understands at the same time. Moving ahead, light touch approach to regulation. This is something which the government has been talking about. In fact, Mr. Prasad, Honorable Minister, in his yesterday's speech, also spoke of a soft touch, light touch approach to policy making. And in line with that concept, we believe that a light touch approach towards the telecom and data sector would help the economy grow significantly. And I remember the Prime Minister of India recently spoke about the fact that government has no business to do business. So I think that's pretty much in line with what the report is talking about, as well as the line of government which is on minimum governance and maximum governance. So how do we achieve these fundamentals, these principles is what my report is looking into. And of course, the Digital India campaign, which was launched a few years ago, which has remarkably turned things around for India and is helping India usher into a 21st century digital economy, to have a digitally empowered society and knowledge economy. But it would be impossible to achieve the Digital India objective of Honorable Prime Minister if you don't have a financially healthy telecom sector, which requires partnerships and collaboration between key government ministries like the DOT, the TRAI, Ministry of IT, and we are grateful to have officials from these ministries today with us, as well as collaboration with the players in the ecosystem. And some of our speakers are also working with a couple of those players. So it's important that the technology companies, the data companies, the telecom companies work together with the government. It should be a collaborative approach. It should be an approach where all of the stakeholders work in line with driving growth, driving jobs, because we do believe that going forward in the next 5 to 10 years, with the right policy approaches, with allowing fair competition, by preventing market abuse and implementing policies which are allowing a level playing field to all partners, I do believe that we can get back to an 8 to 10% growth rate. And that's where digital economy will play such a significant role going forward. And we hope that we achieve the dream of Atmanirbhar Bharat, which the Prime Minister has envisaged. And to achieve that, to create local innovation, local startups, it's important that the startups get market access abroad. And we work with countries our like-minded partners globally to achieve an equitable platform for all stakeholders. So thank you so much. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation of the report. All of you have a copy of the report. We'll be grateful to get your submission, get your inputs, get your feedback. Let us know what else we could have done. Let us know what else policy changes you would like us to suggest, so that this is a process, this is a work which we continue to do going forward as well, and we definitely won't stop until we achieve the dream of $1 trillion economy. So thank you, Balaji, and we look forward to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Kazim. I think I love the way you talked about the need for collaboration and partnership, and also that it's an evolving space, and therefore what we have tried to do as Dialogue on SHM is a document for everyone to look at, provide comments so that it continues to evolve. So thank you very much for that. I now have the pleasure of moving to our next speaker, who will be giving the industry address. That's Mr. Rahul Mathan, who is partner in Trilegal. Very, very knowledgeable person again, and right person to speak on this subject. He is on the board of Trilegal and has served for many years in the firm's management committee. He has been involved in a number of policy initiatives in the TMT space, including assisting the government in implementing country's privacy law. He is a published author and a regular speaker across the world on matters relating to emerging technologies and the law. And he writes a weekly column on the interface of law and technology entitled Ex Machina in Mint, a leading national business daily. And so we couldn't have found a better person to give insights on this particular topic from an industry point of view. So over to you, Rahul.
Thank you. Thank you, Balaji. And I think thank you, ASSOCHAM, for inviting me. I'd first like to commend ASSOCHAM and the Dialogue for an excellent report. I could only read the report yesterday, so I haven't given it the attention that I think it deserves, but from a skim through, it looks very comprehensive, covers a whole range of issues. In many ways, makes it a little difficult for us to add something to what the report has written. But I'm going to try. Of course, it's sort of difficult coming after Dr. Patnaik, who brings so much actual practical experience, that I'm going to find my space even further crowded. But as the industry address, I'd like to take the time that I have, the next 10 or 15 minutes, to cover maybe 3 or 4 aspects of the opportunity that we see. And I'd like to discuss the opportunity in the context, both of the infrastructure that we have created up to now, and the infrastructure that I'm quite sure we are going to create, the regulatory framework that we currently have, as well as the new regulatory innovations that we are seeing, and also just the black swan event of the pandemic that has forced us to digital in a way that we otherwise, I think, inevitably would have got to, but this has really forced our hand. And that the confluence of those 3 things actually provides us a very unique opportunity to hit this target, which is when I first heard it, it seemed like a almost impossible target. But at the end of a year where we have become almost entirely digital, I think it's quite it seems quite possible, and I feel quite excited about it. So let me actually talk about 4 things that I think we all understand, and a 5th thing that is perhaps a little more future looking. I'll talk about work, I'll talk about health, I'll talk about financial services that Dr. Amar Patnaik referred to briefly. I'll talk about education, and then I'll spend some time on future technologies, and I'll talk about why industry is interested and excited in all these areas. So work, of course, the black swan event of the pandemic forced us all overnight to work from our homes. And I think I'm a technology lawyer. I have tech clients from around the world, and I think the world was amazed that the back office of the world, despite an aggressive lockdown, actually didn't buckle. So our back office, the ITES companies, even though they require complex facilities and therefore need to be in offices, went entirely work from home and continue to support the rest of the world when the rest of the world actually had to shut down the front offices of all their businesses. That showed us that this concept of work from home, which the government has introduced a new way of thinking about it, which is work from anywhere, is actually very much possible. And it needed this sort of an event to show us that. And so what my technology companies are most excited about are the liberalization of the OSP regulations. The OSP regulations for a long time have applied, I would say, 15-year-old thinking to telecom. And by liberalizing the OSP regulations to allow companies to interconnect their voice and data in a way that actually benefits the economy, that allows call center agents, well, not call center, but the data agents to work from anywhere. My clients are now saying, look, earlier we used to restrict ourselves to one city because getting an OSP approval and then maintaining it in multiple locations was very hard. But now we will go out into the rural hinterland because we can actually take this work out of the main cities because we don't have that restriction. And so I'm hoping that this approach, which is work can actually go anywhere, is going to transform various other sectors. I'm already talking to manufacturing clients that are thinking more innovatively around things like 3D printing, just to say that it takes us 20 components to make a part, but if I 3D print it, I can make just one component out of it. And we can do this sort of design pretty much anywhere. So that's the first aspect. I think work is going to be transformed. And in order for work to be completely transformed, we will need reliable, resilient telecom infrastructure. I don't mean to belittle 5G, but look, we must do 5G, but we must equally go out into the heartland with reliable internet. And for that, I'm actually really excited by projects like PM-WANI, which in a sense liberate the edge of the network, which is, I think, really important. Getting that last mile is as important as getting the backhaul sorted out, and I'm glad to see that. The second aspect that I'll talk about is health. And of course, in a pandemic, the most important thing is health. But I'm not going to talk about the COVID-related health. I think what the pandemic taught us was, and the lockdown particularly, for 3 weeks, if you're going to be locked down, you do need to speak to your doctors. And telemedicine actually made a big leap during this period of time. And I had the opportunity to work on Arogya Setu, and I know the amount of help that the telemedicine line actually provided. And this may actually only have been comfort, but it showed us that this is a direction in which we can go. It also showed us the power of data in health. Using things like syndromic mapping, essentially mobility mapping, we were able to see other orthogonal uses of data in the health context. And we're realizing, I think, increasingly with the rollout of NDHM, the National Digital Health Mission, the opportunities that a digital backbone for health is going to provide us. It's very interesting to see the way in which various healthcare startups are now folding into alliances like Swasth that are coming together to create, common standards for electronic health records. India is thinking one step further than the rest of the world. We're not thinking of an electronic health record. We're thinking of a personal health record that would track regardless of the hospital that you go to, and make it. I think Dr. Patnaik will be very happy to notice that even before the PDP bill is out, we're actually thinking that the personal data of an individual is the individual's as opposed to the hospital that he visits. And that articulation and framing, I think, is going to change the way we think about health data in the country. The next is financial services. And look, there's not much to be said about financial services because UPI crossed 2 billion transactions a month, which is a staggering number. When I speak to colleagues in the US, their jaw is on the floor all the time because they cannot understand how we have made this kind of a breakthrough in financial services when in the US, financial services still, whether it's digital or not, still follow normal banking hours. I mean, it's really incredible to see the extent to which we have leapfrogged away from the US and other countries as advanced as they may be. But there's still a lot to go because I think, just the payment side is only one side of the story. We've got to get credit out. And we've got to find ways, innovative ways to leverage our data technology to provide solutions actually to the unbanked. Because a lot of what UPI is still dealing with the bank, and it's to try and find, as once again, as Dr. Patnaik said, to get a GEM platform for input, to get credit to the people who provide the input, particularly at the lower end, the sub $25,000 rupee transactions. These are the sorts of transactions that we need to do. And I'm very excited by platforms like OCEN, the Open Credit Enablement Network, that is actually going to build a UPI for credit. And we're already seeing trials with many of the big banks. Very actually heartening to see the big banks adopting this kind of technology solution as the future, even though it is going to be huge investments as far as they're concerned, not just in infrastructure, but in thinking. Most of our banks are very old school in the way in which they think, and so the way they provide loans is very traditional. We've got to break that cycle, and we've got to allow them to think in a more innovative digital first way. But without a doubt, this is the sector that I think we are most excited about and industry is most excited about. Then let me move to education, because this is a place we haven't done so well. I think the children of affluent backgrounds have managed the pandemic very well. Just before this, I was actually on a parent-teacher meeting with my son's teachers, all over Zoom. But even people who are privileged have found that this has been actually quite challenging. I just feel for the children who don't have this opportunity, because essentially they've missed an entire academic year. But what this should do really is to spur us to think of different types of solutions. We should find ways to be inspired by this, to take education to places that it is hard to get education to, where children have to walk 5 kilometers to get to class. In the old days, those sorts of stories were stories of grit. And I walked to 5 kilometers, I studied under a lamppost, and then I became very successful. We've heard stories. Our parents have told us these stories. We don't need to tell these stories anymore. We should actually take education to those places, because we can. And I'm really hopeful that the government will do that. Finally, the last point I'd like to make is on future technologies. And once again, I'd like to point to a very recent policy announcement. It's an arcane sort of one corner of the policy world, and not many people may have followed this with interest, but I have, because for the last 20 years, I've been trying to solve or trying to figure out India's map regulations. And last week, the government of India announced a radical reform of the map regulations. Why am I so interested in this? Maps essentially, and digital maps more particularly, allow us to truly leverage digital and to truly leverage telecom in a way that will add tremendous value to what we currently have. What the government has done is it has liberalized maps up to the satellite scale, which is essentially the maps that we are currently using. It has allowed free use of it. So anyone can use it, anyone can buy it, anyone can innovate on top of it. What the government has also done is recognize the future of maps, which is centimeter scale resolution maps. These are maps that will identify the difference between one street lamp post and another street lamp post. This is the kind of mapping that will allow you to identify items on the shelves of an inventory of a warehouse. And if you start thinking of those sorts of maps, the potential of that is tremendous. The opportunity has been opened up to Indian companies. And I'm hoping that Indian companies will take this and really go to the next level, innovate in a way that no other country has innovated. I'm hoping we will also use LiDAR and these sorts of technologies. And I'm actually very hopeful for the opportunity that all of this will provide to us. So with that, I'd like to thank ASSOCHAM for the opportunity for letting me speak, and also once again, congratulations on this excellent report.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mathan. I think you touched upon, as you said, 5 facets. I love the last reference to maps and what the opportunity that provides, because a lot of people may have not realized that that is the next big opportunity in the digital journey of our country. You mentioned about the wonderful work the back offices that Indian ITES services did, and the government policies were, of course, fantastic. I might just mention in the same spirit that whether it is Vodafone Idea, Airtel, Jio, or BSNL, the network warriors, the people of these organizations did their bit, put their lives at risk to make sure that the dramatic shift in the digital traffic, when suddenly things move from office to home, that huge amount of capacity was added. There was, in fact, as a statistic, you'll be, Dr. Patnaik and others would be interested to know that in 1 week, the sector saw the addition of traffic that happened in the whole year prior to that. That was a kind of traffic enhancement that had to be dealt with in terms of not just the increase in traffic and capacity requirement, but also that it was from different locations, a home location instead of a distributed location instead of a concentrated office occasion. But I think that shows the spirit of India, that shows the processes that have been set up and the maturity of corporations and users and everybody alike. I would now like to move over to Mr. S.K. Gupta, Secretary TRAI, who will give his keynote address. Clearly, it's wonderful to have a person like him who straddles not just the regulatory role that he has been involved in for the last 10 years, but also who has been in the policy in the telecommunication department. So he's an Indian Telecom Services officer, and he was actually a gold medalist from Allahabad University, where he did his graduation in electronics and telecommunication, and he's done his MBA from Delhi. He joined the ITS service in 1983 and worked in Department of Telecom in various capacities. Of course, in the last 10 years, he's been intimately involved in telecom licensing, regulation, implementation in the as a regulator. He's dealt with issues relating from broadband, which of course has made all the efforts that we're seeing in the country today possible. Infrastructure sharing, IP network design and installation, mobile number portability. He's also done a lot of work in the broadcasting and cable services and FM radio area. He's a member of high-profile committees such as Internet Governance Working Group of the Department of IT, convener of the NG and Expert Committee under the aegis of TRAI, and member of the South Asian Telecom Regulatory Council, and a member of the IPv6 focus group constituted by DOT, among others. So without much ado, a privilege to hand over the floor to Mr. S.K. Gupta to share his thoughts and his keynote address.
Thank you, Mr. Balaji. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me thank Mr. Balaji and ASSOCHAM for giving me the opportunity to share my views on this platform. I, being the telecom engineer, very well know that how difficult it was to take care of the telecom services in the pandemic period. And I salute the telecom service providers for coming up to the expectations and ensuring that we all can be in our cozy homes and still be connected, not only for our personal talks and videos, but also for our official requirements. This is not an easy solution, and that requires a lot of in-depth work for which whole telecom industry has to be congratulated. Now, come on today's topic. When we talk about digital economy, the first thing which comes to our mind is how we are digitally connected. If I look back, in December 2020, we have 1.15 billion people who are using mobile phones. And the very important thing, out of this figure, 775 million people are using internet. The growth of users on internet has been pretty fast. And that's a very important point to be noted. India's mobile data consumption is already among the highest in the world. And that is also a very big achievement for us. The adoption of telecommunication has been very fast in last few years. This ongoing pandemic has cleared various doubts. Though we have been talking about the video conferencing and various other e-services to be used, this has forced us to use it, and we have come out with flying colors. We see the emergence of work from home economy through video conferencing, the uptake of e-services, OTT platform for entertainment, e-commerce for banking transactions, e-education, e-governance has increased ever than before. Though the contribution of telecommunication in GDP is approximately 6.5%, and a study indicates that indirect contribution of telecommunication is around 30% to bring back economy after COVID lockdown period. That's marvelous. Now, with increasing digitization, the telecommunication sector has become an essential requirement. It serves as a backbone for the digital activities and digital economy. Various verticals of economy, be it health, education, office automation, entertainment, e-commerce, or finance, all depends on the robust telecommunication infrastructure. India has a very strong potential to create over $1 trillion digital economy by 2025 from around present $200 billion, which is being currently. Now let us consider what exactly needs to be done. The very important thing that we had to encourage the availability of high quality internet for all at any time and anywhere. While internet is being provided and we are much better than a few years back, but lot more needs to be done. Mass training and redeployment of youth workforce to boost digital economy is another need of the hour. We are having video conferencing and other media which can be very effectively utilized for this purpose to provide the training at much lesser economic considerations and still make the people useful to be deployed to boost the digital economy. Consumer education and consumer protection is another area of concern. Many people are still unaware about the developments happening, particularly if I talk about the rural and remote areas, and therefore we had to go to the masses and educate them as to where potential lies and what actually needs to be done. Adoption of new technologies for future digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, autonomous vehicles, advanced GIS, virtual and augmented reality, robotics, cloud computing, etc. are other areas which are having a lot of potential, though some challenges are associated with them. Dynamic business process management industry has to be encouraged, and that will show us way as to how we can boost our digital economy. Early adoption of 5G technology or Internet of Things would be of great importance. Industry Revolution 4.0 would be required. I'm glad to point out that most of the issues has already been enshrined into the policy document of the Department of Telecommunication, commonly known as NDCP 2018. The adopt ease of doing business to give a flip would be another area. Many of the procedures being followed to give various permissions and other things are requiring a relook on that. We had to adopt a very easy to use permission framework under which people transparently know what actually happens to their application. They can fill up those applications online and get the permissions online. So that will really facilitate industry for bigger participation. I also feel that only focus on digital economy will not be sufficient. Digital economy also facilitates brick and mortar economy, so that both go together, and a mix of both will make our country to big heights. Now, having said that, the important thing is what all we are having, which are our assets, and what are our challenges. As far as assets are concerned, we have huge telecom database, and that's very, very important. Over 1 billion IoT connections are already functioning at 2020 and expects to go to 5 million by 2025. This will be great booster. Over 200 million Indians took to mobile banking. So this is clearly indicating that habituations of people not to use digital economy is slowly being overtaken. As pointed out earlier also, the UPI payments of 2.707 billion transactions worth 3.86 lakh crore is a milestone which we have achieved. We have a set of good startups. So if we can encourage these startups and make the things simple for them to adopt, I have no doubt that they can contribute to very great extent for boosting our digital economy. Now, let us see what are the challenges. A well-connected digital India is essential for leading and excelling the industry 4.0, machine-to-machine communication, Internet of Things, cloud computing, and promoting various existing and emerging sectors which ride on the telecom connectivity. The critical issues which occupy the central state relates to data protection and security. We have heard Dr. Patnaik that a lot of things are being done on government front on these issues, and we are quite hopeful that we will hear early on that particular area, because that's going to play a very vital role in formulating our policies for the digital economy. Increasing fiberization would be required for telecommunication networks. I think if we had to really provide good quality of service, today our BTSs are connected by optical fiber to the extent of around 25%. The penetration of optical fiber has to increase at least to reach to about 80 to 90% if good quality of service has to be given. Proliferation of Wi-Fi hotspots is another area of concern. Strategic deployment of the 5G network, use of VSAT links for backhaul in remote areas, indigenous equipment manufacturing is also to be encouraged. As far as data protection is concerned, TRAI has also given a recommendation to government on privacy, security, and ownership of the data in telecom sector in July 2018. TRAI has touched vital areas of concern which primarily relates to telecommunication sector as a whole, and I hope consideration of these recommendations in time-bound manner would be very necessary. If we talk about fiberization, three things has to be done. Right-of-way issues. I am aware that right-of-way is one of the bottlenecks being faced by the telecom service providers. The very high cost of right-of-way, complicated methods to give permission, and no time frame for giving such permission are serious bottlenecks. If we really expect our digital economy to grow, we had to seriously look into time-bound manner as to how right-of-way procedures can be streamlined. The rules, regulations, acts, guidelines has to be looked afresh, and a very conducive environment has to be created where right-of-way can be given online and in a time-bound manner. In-building solutions are another area of concern. I think we all have experienced not having good quality of service within our houses or society and all these things. There are technical reasons. We had to understand the complications and limitations of the technology, and unless we encourage provision of the telecom infrastructure inside the building, that good quality of service cannot be assured. And that's mindset has to be changed, and we had to work afresh as to how in-building solutions can be provided to provide better telecommunication connectivity. Conducive regulatory framework has to be made. I have heard various problems, and this needs to be looked into afresh with the objective to boost the digital economy. As far as qualification of Wi-Fi hotspots are concerned, we have already given our recommendation on WANI, and I'm glad that government has accepted these recommendations. I'm quite hopeful that WANI structure is going to play an important role, and we will be looking at a big boost to the Wi-Fi hotspots across the country, including the rural areas. Provision of backhaul with the microwave rules as well as E-band and V-band has to be looked into, and they had to be made user-friendly, and E-band and V-band has to be located to these telecom service provider on priority basis so that robust backhaul can be provided for better quality of service. strategic deployment of 5G requires allocation of 5G spectrum quickly. As India, we had to identify millimeter wave bands to provide the high-speed internet access. Allocation of spectrum for R&D and testing, etc., requires on top priority basis. I hope with these efforts and some coordination among various sectors, we are right on the target. I am confident that the vibrant telecom sector, various government initiatives, and contributions from the startups will make India reach $1 trillion economy much faster than we earlier expected. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gupta. I think your speech enunciated so many facets on what needs to be done and the opportunities ahead. And your encouragement in your professional capacity and also as a regulator has been a great source of inspiration for all the industry players to continue to strive for more. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ms. Jyoti Arora, who is an IAS officer of Haryana cadre of 1987. She is currently the Additional Secretary and Finance Advisor to Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. In her previous role, she was Additional Chief Secretary in the Government of Haryana. So she brings in tremendous amount of policy and operational experience and rigor, both at state level and central level, because both state and central government are the ones who actually drive the entire digitalization initiatives that the government has been pushing for the last several years. So without much ado, may I request Ms. Jyoti Arora, who's our guest of honor, to kindly share her views on the topic.
Thank you, Balaji. Thanks, ASSOCHAM, for, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Thanks, ASSOCHAM, for inviting me on today's discussion on trillion digital economy by the year 2025. Such webinars are quite useful for the government servants also, because it gives you a perspective of how other stakeholders are looking at the kind of policies which government is following and what interventions or curation is required to bring it up to speed. I would just like to start my conversation by referring to what Shri Rahul Mathan spoke about the recent policy intervention of the Department of Science and Technology regarding regarding the opportunity which the policy has brought in for the indigenous map application people. I just want to inform that yesterday I had a meeting with the NIC people and the Map My India people to see that in the new policy framework, how we can collaborate together, because NIC is already doing the Bharat Maps initiative, and the Map My India, which is one of the largest indigenous Indian company, which is into this domain, to bring them together to kind of create a product which is which can give competition to Google Maps. And we are also in the process of running a challenge round with SAMA, which is the Survey and Mapping Association of the local people, who can then kind of tell what are the different capabilities of our own map apps people, so that we can kind of collaborate their efforts with our own NIC team, and then kind of bring a software product which can be a competitor to the largest player in this field, that is Google Maps. So I just want to give a comfort that government is quite aware of what is happening, and we are trying to look at synergies with different ministries to kind of see where these synergies can lead us to become global players in different software products. Now, having said that, the way I would like to spend next 10, 12 minutes on is how this what has been the METI's initiative in Digital India 1.0, and with the aim of having a 1 trillion digital economy in the year 2025. What is it we are doing in Digital India 2.0? So what are the different pillars on which we are trying to build it? Are we confident that we'll be able to go there? And what are the policy frameworks and the initiatives which the ministry is taking? And of course, one would always be curating the policies because 25 is still 4 years away. But what we have done till now and the blueprint which the ministry has tried to carve out, I'll just like to give a synopsis of that before you. I have also gone through the report which has been released today because it came to me yesterday. Somehow it is a good report. Some of the mostly it is concerning quite a few of its concerns are relating to the Department of Telecommunication. But we have noted down whatever are the concerns on the MeitY side. When I will give you some information about what we are doing, so you would know that the ministry is seized of all these issues. You all know that Government of India launched in 2015 the Digital India program. Now, in the last 6 years, this program has laid the foundation for digital transformation in the country. It has rolled out many projects and approximately a combination of these projects would have touched the lives of more than 1 billion people. The positive impact of this digital transformation is being felt in all aspects of the lives of Indian citizens through several citizen-centric services, from Aadhaar, which has now been providing digital identity to 128 crore citizens, Jan Dhan Yojana, the DigiLocker, which has now touched more than 5.5 crore users, Umang Services, which has onboarded more than 20,000 services from 219 government ministries, and one-click payment through UPI, through which 2.3 billion transactions worth 4.3 trillion was transacted in January 21, amongst many others. This has already been talked about, the kind of impact the UPI platform has had. All these initiatives have also reduced the transaction cost. For example, if a mobile user has to be tested for his identity, in a normal course, it would take 300 to 400 rupees per person. But with the using of Aadhaar, this transaction cost has come down to 2 to 3 rupees. So this kind of framework, which has already been laid out, has already created a lot of opportunities for increasing the digital economy footprint. In the pandemic law, already the speakers have mentioned the kind of framework, the infrastructure which was provided because of the ecosystem which was built in the last few years. This infrastructure was able to provide broadband, the digital services, and the application-based program. And therefore, there was seamless flow of services to the common citizens. The Arogya Setu app has been already talked about, but in the telemedicine, of course, there were a lot of private players giving this service, but through the government platform of eSanjeevani, 1 lakh hours of telemedicine service consultation has already been provided. The CoWIN app, which is now kind of tracking the vaccination program, is another major initiative which was taken. And in the literacy, in the education field, Swam Prabha, a scheme of Ministry of Education, facilitated tele-education using free and direct-to-home channels. 34 direct-to-home educational channels are active now because maybe people do not have the smartphone. Somebody mentioned that even the privileged people have had a setback, but TV is something which is, if it is not even, I mean, one can kind of use the facility of somebody else also. So these are the initiatives which different ministries took, and so therefore, even in the pandemic, the e-governance structure and the services were continued. Now, in this ecosystem we have been able to build in the last few years, but going forward, now this 1 trillion economy nomenclature actually came from the McKinsey report in 2019. The MeitY had published a report, and this report talked about taking the digital economy footprint from 200 billion in 2017-18 to 1 trillion in 2025. This was also in response to the clarion call of the Honorable Prime Minister, where he said that there is an ambition of having around 5 trillion economy of India in the year 2025, and we are hopeful that this 20% will come from the digital economy, for which the ministry is working quite closely with different stakeholders. Now, how this 1 trillion economy, what are going to be the pillars of this? So that report talked about 9 different sectors. This was, some of them have already been mentioned by some of the speakers. This was regarding IT infrastructure and services, e-governance for the future, healthcare for all, quality education for the future, energy for all, next generation financial services, doubling farmers' income, make in India, make for the world, jobs and skills for the future. So these are the 9 pillars which that report talked about. And from this, the ministry has actually kind of tried to build its edifice now for Digital 2.0 on the 6 pillars. The first pillar is the digital services. We feel that the next fillip to this digital economy is going to come from the platform framework. As you all know that along with the Ministry of Health, the National Digital Health Mission has already been launched by the Honorable Prime Minister on August 15, 2020. And we are trying, MeitY is trying to work with different ministries and trying to bring these kind of platforms in different other sectors, education, agriculture, women and child, all ministries, power. We are trying to build, we want to move from app economy to the platform economy, and MeitY is handholding different ministries to bring those kind of, make those kind of platforms. So we think some of this digital economy, most of this, the next will ride on this next wave of technology of platforms. Under the second pillar is the digital infrastructure. In the infrastructure, we are looking at hyperscale data centers, Digital India Infoway, and geospatial technology. Now, you all know that data center policy was put up for public discussion, and the same is being finalized. Maybe we'll come up with the blueprint of that, the policy and the scheme in the next month. Digital India Infoway, which is a communication backbone for riding all the e-governance services, has already been approved at the cost of 7,000 crore for the next 10 years. So we'll build all that infrastructure in the next 2 years. Similarly, we are putting a lot of emphasis on supercomputing mission. So we want to have our own computing facilities. Param Siddhi, which was launched in November 16, 2020, which is going towards the making of our own supercomputer. This was ranked 63rd among top 500 most powerful supercomputers in the world. So we are trying to have Atmanirbhar along with the digital economy, and because this new technology of digital world we feel that it gives us an opportunity to leapfrog and become a major player. And the third pillar, of course, Mr. Naik talked about in detail, but Mr. Amar Patnaik talked in detail, great detail. Well, the ministry is very conscious that this third pillar has to be the digital inclusion, where because we have large population and everything has to actually reach to the lowest denominator. DigiGaon mission we are kind of embarking on, where we want the facilities like urban areas also to go to the rural areas. Somebody talked about CSC not being able to give those services. I just wanted to quote these figures. In 2014, there were 68,000 CSC centers. Now there are 3.8 lakh CSC centers, and they are going on a very different economic model where they are collaborating with different partners to give all kinds of services to the rural areas. I have personally visited the remote corners of Haryana and was very pleased to see the kind of services these CSCs were able to give, because they are people who are from those villages and they have that hunger to succeed, and therefore the kind of network these CSCs have been able to build. Of course, there would be issues at some places, but I think that is one ecosystem which has been able to give kind of services to the last mile. The fourth pillar is the digital confidence. We all know that this Data Protection Act hopefully will be passed by the Parliament soon, and we are also working on the non-personal data protection also. Major important pillar, of course, is of the digital economy would be the electronics manufacturing. I think the whole country knows about the first PLI scheme, which we rolled out of 48,000 crore. Yesterday, the cabinet, day before yesterday, the cabinet passed another scheme of more than 7,000 crore for the hardware in PLI, and we are going to come up with a third scheme on the wearables also. And this, the earlier PLI scheme is likely to increase production worth more than 200 billion in the next 5 years, and export worth 136 billion, and employment generation for 10 lakh. And with the more PLIs, PLI 2.0 and PLI 3.0, which we will be rolling out, I think these numbers are likely to increase further. The last pillar, many of you have also talked about, is about the emerging technologies. Now there is a lot of emphasis being given on these technologies, and more importantly, we are working with all the ministries. For example, if there are drones, how we can embed that technology with the agriculture and then do the data analytics, and therefore bring increase in the farmers' income. So we are working with different ministries, whether it is the smart city concept, the transportation, energy, finance, rural and urban development, and more importantly, developing one of the major initiatives which we have taken. I want to talk about that is about the NLTM, that is the National Language Translation Mission. We want that this knowledge should knowledge and information should become available to everyone. So that mission has been rolled out, and hopefully we will have a speech to the kind of in all the languages of India, and also in the dialects, we should be able to have translations through the machine learning available. Now, on the AI thing, as we have already launched a portal, so we're working on different emerging technologies and trying to find the synergies and how they will ultimately impact have the multiplier effect working with different departments. I'm hopeful and very confident that the numbers which we are projecting of having all these pillars contributing towards the 1 trillion economy, we are quite confident. But I would like to say this, that it's not only the government, but it has to be a Team India effort where we will need the participation of very, very vibrant and close participation from industry, startups, and academic and research institutions, which will make this successful in the long run. So I think this is what I wanted to say. I'm sure that the deliberations which we are having today probably, and the kind of the report which we have already brought out, and the kind of suggestions which ASSOCHAM would like to give to the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, we'd be very happy to engage with you and try to do the change in the policy wherever required. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Arora, for your, rather comprehensive view on the initiatives that are being done by the IT Ministry and the government. And what you said about Team India, I think that was a fantastic sentiment to express. Now we have the last speaker, but not the least, Ms. Anita Praveen. As I mentioned earlier, ma'am had to go for a meeting with the finance minister, but she had a speech that she wanted us to read out on this occasion. Ms. Anita Praveen is an IAS officer of the Tamil Nadu cadre, and she's working as the additional secretary in the Department of Telecom. She was prior to this the additional secretary and finance advisor in the Department of Posts in her previous role. Again, bringing in a lot of experience of the field as well as the policy domain, because she's served in the state government as well as in the central ministries. We have our colleague Anjali Hans, who would read out her speech. Varun, can you kindly facilitate that?
Thank you, Balaji. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Anjali, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I'm stepping into some very big shoes, but I'm going to read out for Ma'am Additional Secretary the message that she has given for this event. India finds itself at a unique crossroad never ever seen before. The coming together of a demographic transition and stable economic growth in an age of digital technologies. Making the most of this opportunity will require a renewed focus and a quantum leap in performance in sectors like education, healthcare, manufacturing, and agriculture. With telecom as a lifeline, it is these important sectors that will be at the core of achieving inclusive growth and attaining the demographic dividend. We are well on our way to create a digitally intelligent India. The success of Digital India initiatives has paved the way for the next wave of technology infusion for disruptive transformation of business and governance models. Industry and government are looking at artificial intelligence as a key enabler of the next wave of growth. Machines are likely to be seen as co-workers in the very near future. The impact of these technologies and solutions is indeed going to be profound on all facets of business and society. Digital transformation is crucial for economic growth and will act as a catalyst for India's dream of becoming a $1 trillion economy. The government's Digital India plan aims to push India's digital transformation and empower citizens. This initiative supported the opening of more than 350 million verified Jan Dhan accounts in India, over 85% of which are used to access credit and saving products. The digital economy alone can support millions of jobs in the future, fueled by progressive policy and regulatory environment. In manufacturing and services, digitization can help improve efficiency, productivity, transparency, and accountability. As technology pushes economic growth, it also has a crucial role to play in the social and personal areas of human life. India's digitally backed policy initiatives have facilitated the country's ease of doing business, as getting construction permits and training across borders becomes simpler through digitization and associated structural reforms. At a time when business operations and supply chains across the world were disruptive, technology helped maintain continuity and ensure that most services are provided to consumers. Education continues, albeit through online platforms. Telemedicine supports patients wherever possible. While a lot more needs to be done to bridge the digital divide, it is crucial for both the public and private sector to make concerted efforts. As economic activity picks up, businesses and other stakeholders are acutely aware of the importance of digital technologies in coming times. While they long recognized the benefits of technology adoption, they now understand the need to embed technology as a part of all strategic initiatives to ensure continuity. As more people prefer to work from home and businesses diversify and recreate risk management systems, the digital backbone would need to be enhanced. Additionally, policymakers would have to match the pace of changes in technology to ensure a comprehensive regulatory framework that facilitates adoption, keeping in mind concerns around data privacy and security. The COVID 19 pandemic has presented a unique opportunity to India to lure global manufacturing giants as companies look to diversify their supply chains. For India to emerge as the new manufacturing hub of the world, it cannot focus only on sectors where other countries have a strong manufacturing prowess. Instead, India should look to complement that approach with a focus on manufacturing of goods of the future. To give you some data on the growth of digital users in the country, India has over 718 million internet subscribers and over 1.1 billion wireless subscribers. Smartphones play a key role in availing digital services in the country. As per the TRAI, India has over 600 million smartphones, and the number is expected to grow at a compound rate of 12.9% to reach 859 million smartphones by 2022. Internet and mobile usage amongst the masses is attributable to reliance on technology for communication through social media and consumption of digital services. To attract global companies looking to de-risk their supply chains, India presents itself as an attractive destination, increasingly supported by business-friendly reforms. Apart from the labor cost savings, India offers investors incentives to boost domestic manufacturing, a large talent pool, along with lower operating costs and a business-friendly policy environment. The vast consumer market of India also positions the country as a preferred manufacturing destination. The strong emphasis of the Indian government in transforming the domestic manufacturing sector is expected to progressively lead to enhanced technology adoption, large-scale employment creation, strengthened advanced manufacturing capabilities, and improved competitiveness in the global arena. Various initiatives undertaken by our government include the Bharat Broadband Network, the Center for the Excellence of Internet of Things, Common Service Centers, Cyber Swachhta Kendras, the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana, DigiLocker, DigiSevak, Integrated Health Information System are all fueling the growth of the Indian economy. The recently announced schemes will promote manufacturing in the country, and India is poised to become the global manufacturing hub. PLI, which shall extend an incentive of 4 to 7% to MSME and 4 to 6% to other than MSME on incremental sales over the base year for goods manufactured in India and covered under target segments to eligible companies for a period of 5 years subsequent to the base year as defined. This will also encourage incremental investment and ancillarization. SPEC. The scheme will provide financial incentive of 25% on capital expenditure for the identified list of electronic goods that comprise downstream value chain of electronic products, i.e. electronic components, semiconductor, display fabrication units, ATMP units, specialized subassemblies, and capital goods for manufacture of aforesaid goods, all of which involve high value-added manufacturing. EMC 2.0. This scheme provides financial assistance for setting up both EMC projects and common facility centers across the country. The scheme is open for receipt of applications for a period of 3 years from the date of notification. Further period of 5 years is available for disbursement of funds to the approved projects. Our government has also approved an ambitious project called PM Vani, or the PM Wi-Fi Access Network of India. Under this project, there will be 1 crore Wi-Fi data centers across the length and breadth of India, which will help proliferation of broadband internet, enhancement of income and employment, and empowerment of people. Our government has undertaken many steps playing an important role in the sector's revival. In 2019, DoT offered telecom companies a 2-year moratorium on payments for spectrum. Also, the implementation of the zero interconnect usage charges was deferred by 1 year. We have also recently revised the international termination charges from 30 paise a minute to a range of 35 to 65 paise per minute. The TRAI is also currently reviewing the norms for tariffs. I congratulate ASSOCHAM for having the proactive approach and working closely with the government for the further growth of the industry. I wish this discussion all success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anjali, for reading out the message from Ms. Anita Praveen. It is now my privilege to call upon my dear colleague Ashwini Rana to present the vote of thanks on behalf of ASSOCHAM. Again, a veteran in the telecom and now the OTT and the internet space. He's also co-chair of the ITES and Digital Committee of ASSOCHAM. Over to you, Ashwini.
Thank you, Balaji. So $1 trillion digital economy is a topic, and thank you so much for enlightening the audience views, but I'll say goal is same, how we can achieve $1 trillion economy from sides. I think it cannot be achieved unless India becomes a net digital services and product exporter. If we have that vision, then I think at the same time, vision also comes from something which is already existing there. We are in a unique opportunity, I'll say India is in, where there is a supply side equation is there, and demand side numbers are also there. Look at 700+ million internet users and our growing startup, which is tech startup ecosystem in India. So supply side opportunities are there, demand side opportunities are there. So it is going to be a good opportunity for us to achieve this target earlier. Tech capacity building is something which is definitely required to do that, especially in a interconnected and interdependent world, which is also in a way spirit of Atmanirbhar Bharat. So these kind of reports like Dialogue has done along with ASSOCHAM helps in making a informed decision at various levels, and we will continue supporting these kind of initiatives from ASSOCHAM. On behalf of ASSOCHAM, I would like to thank Dr. Amar Patnaik, Honorable Member of Parliament, Ms. Anita Praveen, Additional Secretary, Ms. Jyoti Arora, Special Secretary, Ministry of IT, Shri S.K. Gupta, Secretary TRAI, Rahul Mathan from Trilegal, Kazim from Dialogue, and my colleague Balaji from, we say he belonged to industry, along with Vodafone Idea and ASSOCHAM. And also I want to thank ASSOCHAM, Deepak Sood, Secretary General, and Secretariat for organizing this event. Namaste and wish you all the best.
Thank you all.